Wait, crayons? Don't talk about crayons. Crayons? Crayons?
I'm done with life, and it's all Jermaine's fault. It's always Jermaine's fault. I'm done.
What's good, everybody? AB Media 83 here. And today on AB Media 3 special, and yes, we will be having a Coliseum later. But on today's AB Media 83 special, we are going to be talking about the late, great Reverend Jesse Jackson. Jesse, for those who didn't hear, Jesse Jackson unfortunately passed away this week, and you saw the title. Was Jesse Jackson a sellout? And the short answer is no, not even close. In fact, I got my notes here. We're going to go over his history. In his early career, Jesse was, believe it or not, a protege of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He marched with him, and if I'm not mistaken, he was unfortunately there when Dr. King got shot. Yes, we will get into that later. He organized a read-in in a library in his hometown in South Carolina, his birthplace. He marched. He participated in multiple marches in the 1960s. He participated in multiple marches in the 1960s. He was the director of Operation Breadbasket. Basically, he did a lot. He did a lot of stuff. Now, for those of you who don't know, he's the founder of several organizations, including Operation Push, United to Save Humanity. This was started in Chicago and focused on, Black people's outlook. Then, when he ran for president in 1984, he started the Rainbow Coalition. And this was a little bit more broader than Black people. It focused on other people's needs too. And that was more than likely necessary because, well, he was running for president. Then he founded Rainbow Push in 1996. And this basically combined the two groups into one. So yeah, Jesse has a long history. Jesse has a very long history. Now, before we get into his presidential runs, believe it or not, he was somewhat of an international diplomat. He helped secure the release of a Navy Navy Lieutenant Robert Goodman from Syria. In 1990 and 1991, he negotiated the release of hundreds of foreign nationals during the Iraq War and Kuwait, who were being held by Saddam Hussein. In 1999, he got 3 Americans released from Yugoslavia. If I'm not mistaken, they were prisoners of war. So yeah, Jesse has a long. I could probably be here all. I could probably be here all day Just going over Jesse Jackson's accomplishments. Now let's go into his presidential runs. He ran in 1984 and 1988. He came in third place in 1984 for the record. I'm kind of glad he lost that election because we all saw what happened to Walter Mondale. Yeah, that was ugly. But to his credit, he also won second place in 1988, and he won 11 state primaries. His run for president was actually quite impressive, considering he was an outsider. Now, he what kind of policies did Jesse Jackson run on? He ran on improving infrastructure. Gee, where have you heard that before? He ran on tax reform. He also, where have you heard that before? He also ran on corporate accountability. Wait a minute. Yeah, basically, Bernie Sanders ripped most of his shit off of Jesse Jackson. It is what it is. But here's my favorite. He also fought for single-payer health care. Yes, that's right. Bernie Sanders was not the first presidential candidate to suggest single-payer health care. That was the late, great Reverend Jesse Jackson. Let me say that again for the Negroes that didn't hear me in the back. Bernie Sanders was not the first person to suggest single-payer health care. That was the late, great Reverend Jesse Jackson. Oh, and a little side note about that fist fight for health care. When he ran in 1998, Michael Dukakis, believe it or not, turns out Romney Care, which is what Obamacare is based off of, is what Michael Dukakis ran on. What's that old saying? Nothing is new under the sun. Oh, and when Hillary Clinton asked for health care and when her husband was in office, to satisfy Jesse Jackson's, the more progressive side of the aisle, she offered the public option. What's that BGS says all the time? History does not repeat itself, but it sure as hell does rhyme. He also fought for voting rights for all Americans. He also fought for LGBTQ rights. Yes. Before it was popular, the Reverend Jesse Jackson fought for LGBTQ rights. And I looked at some of his policies, and believe it or not, it's not what you think it is. They were actually quite moderate. And on a little side note, basically the LGBTQ community stole the red flag from Jesse Jackson. Hence the reason I gave him a rainbow tie in honor of his work with the Rainbow Coalition. But yeah, Jesse Jackson has a long history, but let's see, there's some other stuff too. Here's something Jesse Jackson did that Bernie Sanders refused to do. He fought for reparations. Oh, let me say that again for the Negroes that didn't hear me in the back. Jesse Jackson fought for reparations. Let that sink in. So when you heard that, that's probably one of the reasons why Bernie Sanders lost some of the black vote, because he refused to fight for reparation. Oh, would you look at this? Look at some of the other stuff Jesse Jackson fought for. He fought for nuclear freeze, which basically means limiting nuclear weapons. He also supported Palestine before it was popular. Yes, that's right. 40 years ago, Jesse Jackson was fighting for Palestine when it wasn't even popular. Here's another one. He was also fighting for non-intervention. In other words, anti-regime change. Now, I knew some of this. I didn't know all of it. But based on my research and based on what I've been reading, I'm going to say something that's a little controversial, but it's just true. If the Democratic Party had actually fought to implement what Jesse Jackson was talking about, they would have never lost to Donald Trump twice. Let me say that again for Mike V in the Butthurt Brain Trust and Man of Tomorrow. If the Democrat Party had actually made a legit push for what Jesse Jackson was suggesting, they would have never lost to Donald Trump. And quite frankly, they lost to Donald Trump twice. If they had followed, and polls showed back then, if Bernie Sanders had won the nomination, he had a better shot at beating Trump both times. Very funny. Both times. When they polled him against Donald Trump, he beat Donald Trump. But the Democrats refused to nominate him. And you got what you got. You got Hillary Clinton. Yeah, she won the popular vote, but she lost the electoral college. Sure, Joe Biden won, but he was a dementia patient. They tried to run that dementia patient again without a primary. Then when people figured out that Joe Biden wasn't all there, they ran an incompetent AKA who slept her way to the top in Kamala Harris. And none of the stuff she was talking about was even near Jesse Jackson's policy or platform. She mostly ran on abortion. And you better vote for me because I'm a woman. She ran on I'm speaking. It is what it is. But don't take my word for it. Let's look at what Savvy Sabs have to say about the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Then we're going to take a look at what Judge Joe Brown said about Jesse Jackson.
Let's get into the breaking news story, ladies and gents. So this one was the first thing that I saw earlier today, and that is that Jesse Jackson has died. And, people have mixed feelings about Jesse Jackson. I'll be very clear about that. Some people are very happy with the work that he did for like civil rights.
Yeah, that's an understatement. I could talk about his extramarital affair and all that crap, but it is what it is. He was human. He was a man. And unfortunately, he did earn the name Jesse Jackson. He did a lot of other stuff too that I'm not going to get into, but
even some of his, presidential campaigns, I think he ran twice. Some people are happy about that. And then some people have said that they believe that Jesse Jackson is a Fed, that he was an informant. He was one of the people that were standing there at that motel with MLK when, you know,
we'll talk about that later too.
MLK was assassinated, and there have been people that have said that they felt he played a role in that. I don't have evidence to prove that, but there's some things that I do want to show you about him that you may not be aware of. So let's get into the first clip here, ladies and gents. Again, it was announced earlier today. Jesse Jackson, 84 years old, has died.
As ABC News has confirmed, Reverend Jesse Jackson has died.
For more than 5 decades, he stood as a towering figure of the civil rights movement, rising to prominence in the 1960s alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a vocal champion fighting for desegregation and equality for Black Americans and marginalized communities, a fierce advocate for voting rights.
Reverend Jackson was at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis the night Dr. King was assassinated. He was standing in the courtyard and was among the first to reach him after that fatal shot was fired.
He founded Operation Push, dedicated to improving the economic status of African Americans and disadvantaged groups. A trailblazer and 2-time presidential candidate, he ran for the Democratic nomination in 1984 and 1988. His Rainbow Coalition was designed to form a diverse alliance of African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, women, and the LGBTQ community.
And I want to add something here, right? Because a lot of times, you know, there's a lot of credit, and I'll show you this later, that goes to Bernie Sanders for building like this class movement. But I think people do need to realize where Bernie Sanders got that from. That came from Jesse Jackson. When Jesse Jackson was running for president, he had that populist campaign.
Yes, yes. In fact, I believe it was Dr. Neal pointed this out yesterday. Bernie Sanders actually went to go talk with Jesse Jackson. And yeah, that's where Bernie Sanders got his populist message. See what happens when you read history? Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. By the way, I have 6 watching. Like, share, subscribe, hit that Cash App. Scroll at the bottom, support the show, and hit the Super Chat and support the show. All right, let's continue.
Platform. And so you'll see a little bit later where I'll show you where Jesse Jackson actually met with Bernie Sanders before Bernie, you know, even ran for president, etc. So a lot of times it's good to look back and see where these things came from. Now, I say that to bring this up as well, because what I did also research is that Jesse Jackson was also trying to push the Democratic Party in a more progressive direction, and that did not.
Yes, long before Bernie Sanders, there was the late great Reverend Jesse Jackson. They're trying to push the Democrats in the right direction. They'll probably never go now because it's still ran by the Clintons. Yeah, I said it.
That did not pan out. So this whole idea of pushing the Democratic Party, that's not new. People were trying this quite some time ago. Let's continue on.
Reverend Jackson was visibly moved to tears when President Obama was first elected in 2008. The realization of his lifelong work and
we also going to get into why he said he wanted to cut Obama's nuts off too.
Paralleled victory of the civil rights movement.
His life was dedicated to civil rights during some of America's most turbulent times. A legacy of steadfast activism, giving a voice to millions and helping reshape the American landscape.
Yes, very much so.
Here's ABC's Pierre Thomas with a look back at Jackson's life.
All of his life, the Reverend Jesse Jackson preaching, exhorting, demanding justice, and quest to help his people and nation overcome.
We ain't the bottom, we the foundation.
Always marching, civil rights nonviolent soldier. There he was, shoulder to shoulder with Martin Luther King Jr. after witnessing the beating.
Yeah, Jesse Jackson, say what you want about Jesse Jackson's flaws. He was the textbook definition of grassroots.
It's the Bloody Sunday on television. Jackson eventually became one of the top lieutenants in the critical Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which challenged the Jim Crow South's withering oppression. A witness to history, He was there on that fateful April evening when King was struck down by an assassin's bullet.
This is what some people point to, right? When I told you some people felt as though Jesse Jackson was an informant, they point to this moment. They said that Jesse Jackson was the one that told him to move up to the second floor. And
there's no proof of that.
Again, I don't have evidence to prove that, so I'm not going to say that I know for sure. I don't know.
And we're going to get into that later when we play Judge Joe Brown's video.
Know that for sure. But this is one of the things that people had pointed towards.
I tried to feel his head, and I asked him, I said, Dr. King, do you hear me? Dr. King, do you hear me? And he didn't say anything.
After a leadership struggle with King's successor, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, Jackson split from the SCLC and formed a new organization, People United to Save Humanity, PUSH.
Beautiful. After Dr. King, I don't think anyone captured the spirit of America like Reverend Jackson, and he took the movement north.
You got to remember, Dr. King wasn't as popular as they claim he was when he got shot. He became popular afterwards.
I think Jesse Jackson was the link from that generation of King and them all the way to my generation, and then the generation.
By the way, Jesse Jackson is the last of the civil rights generation. Last major figure of the civil rights generation to pass away.
Behind me.
Now
Reverend Al Sharpton, he's just a sellout. What did BGS call him? All right, his favorite hoe, because he's always hoeing out to the Democrat Party. Anyway,
I do know when I covered this before that Al Sharpton definitely was an informant, right? So
yeah,
I do know about that. I do have evidence of that.
The first wave of the civil rights movement had succeeded in breaking down significant barriers, but Jackson's primary focus was on economic empowerment.
Yes.
We know that we are worthy of respect and protection, but nobody really knows our name, and so we're really still struggling.
He broke boundaries in politics, twice running for president, first in 1984 under the banner of a rainbow coalition.
Our flag is red, white, and blue, but our nation is rainbow. Red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight.
Now, where did he get the Rainbow Coalition from, right? I'm pretty sure he got that idea from the Black Panthers. So you see that nothing is new, right? You see that people usually take things that have already happened and try to recycle it and add something a little bit new towards.
Very true.
So it just goes to show you how far back this goes.
In 1988, he was for a time the Democratic Party's frontrunner for the presidential nomination, winning 11 primaries and caucuses before eventually losing the nomination to Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis.
I'd rather go down in the stirring fight than drowse to death at the sheltered shore.
Jackson also took on the role of freelance international negotiator, meeting with some of the world's most brutal tyrants.
That's something I wanted people to see. That one thing I will say is Jesse Jackson was willing to meet with people, especially in regards to foreign policy.
Yeah, Jesse Jackson was a diplomat, and notice he didn't have the stupid ass stance that we don't negotiate with terrorists, like Sleepy Joe Biden did. We don't meet with terrorists. Jesse Jackson got people released and hostages freed.
That other people were not willing to meet.
He fought apartheid in South Africa too.
With. So yeah, he did meet with Fidel Castro right here.
Overseas, the American black activist Jesse Jackson has become an intermediary in the Middle East.
In 1984, he met with Syria's Hafez al-Assad.
Goodman and the Reverend Jackson arrived at Andrews Air Force Base,
securing the release of downed American naval officer Lieutenant Robert Goodman. In 1990, he held talks with Saddam Hussein to free foreign nationals being held in Iraq as human shields. And in 1999, he went behind enemy lines again to meet with Slobodan Milosevic to negotiate the return of 3 American prisoners of war. At times, he was a spiritual advisor, counseling President Clinton in his darkest hour, facing impeachment over a sex scandal. But Jackson had his own moments where he fell far short of what he had championed.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
in the mid-1980s facing controversy for allegedly making a highly offensive remark about the Jewish community.
We're going to get to something else here in just a second, because I wanted you to see this as well, even going back then, right? So the comment that he made wasn't anti-Semitic, but I'm going to show you what he said in the interview. But look at how even back then, see how they came after him. And I really do believe that's part of the reason why he did not get the Democratic Party nomination.
Yeah.
They have done this to other people. I told you they
True.
did it to Charles Barron, who was running against Hakeem Jeffries. They came after him with the anti-Semitic smears. And so that's how Hakeem Jeffries moved up in the polls, and he ended up in that seat in Congress. A lot of people don't know about this.
Yeah.
So had it not been for that, Charles Barron, who's a former Black Panther, he would have been sitting in Congress instead of Hakeem Jeffries. And then you got people out here today telling you, don't challenge Hakeem Jeffries. So you see, he ended up being just a corporate shill. Something else I want to show you here.
Just a little side note. Who looks at Hakeem Jeffries as a man in general? I mean, seriously, who looks at that dude and said, that's a real man? I'm just saying.
About Jesse Jackson. Again, when I talk about how he passed this message on to Bernie Sanders, learn about the civil rights leader influence in Vermont. Bernie Sanders endorsed Jackson's 1988 presidential campaign, creating a kinship that would influence his own politics in 2016. Yeah, this is so important for people to see and to understand. In 1988, Jesse Jackson came to Vermont during his presidential campaign. That's Bernie Sanders there back in the day. Sanders, who was mayor of Burlington at the time, told a crowd of 1,000 people that he was endorsing Jackson's campaign. So people got to realize, like, this is really where Bernie got that from.
Yep.
This idea, this
Yes,
inspiration
ma'am.
for Sanders. The pair
Yes, ma'am. It ain't come from out of nowhere.
Shared similar ideologies, challenging corporate power and championing issues like universal health care decades before they became mainstream in the Democratic Party. So see, this all goes back. Now, fast forward to 2016, Jesse Jackson ended up endorsing Hillary Clinton, and then he later endorsed Bernie in 2020. Now, this is one of the things that people criticize Jesse Jackson about. You know, I often wonder, like, if he would have endorsed Bernie in 2016, you know, would things have been different?
No, and while I may not agree with that choice, in all fairness, they would have screwed Bernie anyway. It wouldn't have mattered, in my opinion.
I mean, the DNC cheated anyway at the convention, but I wonder if things would have been a little bit different, you know? But there was just this idea that
I doubt it, Savvy. They would have cheated him anyway.
After Obama, it was supposed to be Hillary Clinton. And I think you guys know how I feel about that. But
y'all know how I feel about that too. I confess, I held my nose and voted for Hillary Clinton. And to this day, I cannot get that stench out of my nose.
One thing that Jesse Jackson was right on when it was, I would say, more so controversial to say at that time, was the issue of Palestine. While more people feel more empowered to say free Palestine today, during that time when Jesse Jackson said it, he received a lot of ridicule. And this is where some of those comments, they were like, oh, he said this about the Jewish community. Listen to what Jesse Jackson actually said.
You offended the Jews, and about you were sick and tired of hearing about the Holocaust. To say that when we're not sick and tired of hearing about black lynchings in the South and so on, I mean, we're still sympathetic. And what incredibly bad timing.
After visiting the Holocaust site, the tour guide asked me, how did I feel about it? I said, one has to have a sense of tragedy. And I think it's real tragic. I said, and the phrase that many Jewish people use, never again, really should apply to everybody, because all of us should say never again to fascism, because this is the logical conclusion of fascism. So you say, well, you make it sound as if it's just a humanitarian crisis. When
look what happened in the Gaza Strip for the last 2 or 3 years. He's absolutely correct.
It's in fact unique. I said, well, as a social scientist, I choose to use the word tragic. He said, but unique. I say tragic. I said, I read Trail of Tears. I know how the Indians were exterminated. 60 million blacks were lost between Africa and America. Other similar situations. And so he became offended because I chose to use the word tragic rather than unique, which reflects a certain hypersensitivity that we must have a new formula in the Middle East that represents more balance in our policy. We must be concerned about Palestinian justice, Lebanon's territorial integrity protected, and normalized ties with the Arab world. That must not be considered offensive.
When quotes like...
So do you see what I'm saying? Back then, they came after him because he was basically saying like the Palestinian people deserve a right to self-determination. He also went on to fight for what would become the Jackson plank, which was a push for the Democratic Party to establish that Palestinians needed an independent state. I'll show you who blocked that from coming to the floor in just a second. You see, history has a way of repeating itself.
That comes out about the Holocaust and so on. Who would be out to discredit you so by getting that kind of misquote?
Well,
if it is, as you say, a misquote.
Many Jewish people were insulted and outraged by virtue of the fact that we accepted Arafat's invitation to go to Lebanon. And therefore, and there were many who simply attempted to sabotage the trip by trying to discredit us and therefore make our meeting with him an irrelevant trip as opposed to a relevant trip. One of the guys who helped to deal with our ticket arrangements, getting a travel agent, he became so irate over the fact that we were going to meet this anathema, this guy called Arafat. And he just simply went in rage and lost all sense of emotional balance. He did a press conference.
I mean, this is the man who worked for you?
No, he did not work for us. So that was a lie he told. He did not work for us.
When you had your picture taken hugging Arafat, that, of course, offended a lot of people. Strange bedfellows to be hugging a member of the PLO, an organization not unassociated with terrorism.
It's a matter of respect. In that part of the world, one of the common cultural ways of greeting people is with an embrace and a hug on both sides.
Yes.
You offended.
So see how back then he was getting heat because he went to speak to Arafat and noticed that the host there said, well, you're sitting down with terrorists. So you see, guys, things that are happening today, these things are not new, right? And so obviously, of course, because he said that the Palestinians should have their own state, etc., of course, the Democratic Party was not going to give him the nomination. Now, I mentioned that he pushed something called the Jackson plank. That's interesting because it was Chuck Schumer who blocked that from coming to the floor.
Yes, that Chuck Schumer, the current minority leader in the Senate for the Democrats, and will be the majority leader if the Democrats win the Senate. Yeah, that's the kind of people who are running the Democrat Party right now. But Butthurt Blue wants me to blindly vote for the Democrat Party after the shit they did to Jesse Jackson.
Sound familiar? He's been doing these things as of late as well. Chuck Schumer, this goes way back. He goes way back. And of all the people that decided to issue their remorse for Jesse Jackson dying, it was Chuck Schumer. So a lot of people are ratioing Chuck Schumer right now. He said Jesse Jackson was an icon of the civil rights movement and a fearless warrior for justice for all people. He was one of
who you screwed over,
the most powerful forces for positive change in our country and our world. America is more equal and a just place thanks to his work. My prayers are with his family and all of those who were inspired by him. As we honor Reverend Jackson in the coming days, I will be thinking of the many lessons he taught us. Never look down on anybody unless you're helping them up. We should all seek to embody that spirit and serve others the way Rev Jackson did. Keep hope alive. Well, you know, I'm sure Chuck Schumer, if you are doing some type of event or something for this, he's probably going to put on some kente cloth and maybe even kneel to virtue signal to the Black community. Because here's the thing.
Yeah, but y'all get the gist. Let's go to Judge Joe Brown. His is a little more intriguing.
Done that too, and created for minutes
now. Welcome back to another Injustice for All with Judge Joe Brown. Hi, Judge. How are you?
Shut up. Shout out to Dana with the data, and Judge Joe Brown.
So today, I want to dedicate this show and talk about Jesse Jackson. He passed away.
Also, thank you for the cash app.
Tuesday,
I mean,
February 17th, I believe. 84 years old.
You get
So I want to speak to his legacy and a video. I also want to bring up a video from Hosea Williams.
Thank you, donors.
Years ago, speaking about Jesse Jackson. About the Martin Luther King assassination that involved Jesse Jackson. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But I wanted to have you speak about Jesse Jackson, his legacy, beneficial to Black America, yay, nay, and just talk to what he meant to America, to American history, Black America, and just his legacy overall.
He was a young man. He did a lot for the movement, as we called it back then.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the things that he did that should speak for themselves have been tarnished because, frankly, the FBI engaged in a very concerted effort, along with certain law enforcement entities and various large cities, to discredit Reverend Jackson. And the fear was that he would somewhat inherit the joint mantles of Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King and continue to galvanize what at that time was looked as anti-war or anti-exclusion rules that were being set up and try to make things fundamentally fair and revitalize labor. That was not looked at as a good thing. So they did a pretty thorough job on trying to discredit him. So a lot of people now think he was a sellout. I can tell you without equivocation that he is not the one that betrayed Dr. King. There's another
Y'all hear that? Bear in mind, Judge Joe Brown has literally worked on the Dr. King case. So he has a lot of weight that a lot of people don't.
Somebody, and if you're interested into who, Dick Gregory recorded an interview with that person a few months before Dick Gregory, died, which was about a year before the individual who was a preacher died. So you can get the allegations in the interesting declaration that person made about why he ducked back into the Lorraine Motel because he did not wish to be shot when he escorted Dr. King out onto the balcony, and that was before Dr. King got shot. So it is what it is, and as I have said often, be careful who you associate with, because some of the people really ought to be avoided or suppressed because they aren't good for anybody. They're self-serving. And if that means sacrificing you and the cause that you were trying to dedicate yourself to, they will be only too happy to do so for personal advancement.
Very true.
Ever met him?
Who?
Jesse
Jackson? Oh, several occasions. I think it was actually 3. I actually sat in very
just for the record, I haven't met him personally, but I have seen him in person. I was at a Baptist convention and he spoke.
Next to him on an airplane for several hours on a flight from LA to Chicago
Although I don't remember it in particular, I've also met Dr. King's wife.
DC.
And I've seen his grave. Come on.
Can you tell us quickly about it?
Very interesting. He's a very dedicated person, very concerned. And see, my experience is when he ran for president twice, did pretty well. Donald Trump, amongst other things, assisted him in the process. And
oh, I neglected to mention that. Guess who ran both of Jesse Jackson's campaigns? Who funded both of Jesse Jackson's campaign? Yeah, that's right. The current president, President Donald Trump.
seems to have furnished free headquarters for him in a number of critical places and assisted him with organizational facilities and resources. So there are some people that have helped us out who are bad-mouthed because those who wish to keep the status quo wish to conceal the fact that somebody was actually doing something worthwhile and get the people who were beneficiaries of those efforts to turn against them. And meanwhile, some people who mean us absolutely no good are being propped up as somehow or another very good for us, which they're not. But
well,
I was a grown person when this thing went down in 1968. I could vote, buy whiskey, and sign contracts. So I was well aware of the circumstances. And when I became the last judge on the James Earl Ray case, and we got deeply into what was happening with the death of Dr. Martin Luther King, and I reached my conclusions, a lot of this came out.
Well, I want to play this clip here, right? This is interesting.
Okay, let's hear it.
Now, Jesse Jackson did not portray Martin Luther King, but he did something that was disrespectful, I would say that. So are you familiar with Hosea Williams?
I am.
Okay, so this is him. This probably was recorded either early 2000 or 1990. Wait.
We were in the meeting, and someone said, Reverend Billy Cowles is outside.
He's describing the day that MLK was assassinated.
And he's upset. And Dr. King said, oh my God, I forgot to tell y'all. I promised his wife, who's supposed to be a great soul food cooker, we'd have our feet on her table at 5:30. Now it's 5:45, and we sit in the meeting. Dr. King said, everybody rush.
Yeah, pretty much.
And get ready in a hurry. Let's go. So I ran down and got to my room. My key wouldn't open my door for some strange reason. The limousine that had been loaned to us, I opened my door. I could touch the limousine. And finally, I heard the driver tell Dr. King, Dr. King, I advise you get your top coat, because even though I have the car on, it's still chilly. And the last words he said in this world, okay, Jonesy, I'll get my top coat. And I heard this thing say, pow! And I honestly thought someone had thrown a firecracker into the air. And I looked around to rebuke whoever was that stupid. And I heard something, bloop, fell up above my head. And I looked up, and his leg was sticking through the rail. Dr. King only wore one type of sock and one type of shoe. And I knew that was him. I said, oh, my God, they got it. And then I had to run about 50 feet down and back up, and I got to him. And Ralph was holding his head, and Andy was there. And a guy from Africa who had been traveling with us as a newsman from Africa. We found out later on he was working for the CIA. No, the FBI, working for the FBI. And he'd taken a lot of pictures of Dr. King. And I grabbed him in and threw that and started choking him, because the bullet hit Dr. King right here. And it went round and cut his medulla oblongata. And I didn't want people to remember Dr. King with half his face shut off. So Andy ran and got a towel. And somehow or another, they took one more picture after I made him enter that camera. And it shows Dr. King down with a towel on his face. But I'm going to tell you, I was an expert gunner in World War II. When I ran up on that balcony, and I looked from whence that bullet had to come, the distance of that bullet, and just could feel the wind blowing that day. I said, whomever shot that rifle was one of the best in the world. He shot one bullet. And I believe if Dr. King hadn't moved to go back and get his top coat, the bullet would have hit him between the eyes. The bullet hit him right here. But what happened, and then Ralph said, we'll go in and take him on to the hospital. Jose, you get all the staff together. 3 of us saw it, Dr. King, after he was shot. 3 SLC executive staff members. Andy, Abernathy, and Hosea Williams. Those are the 3 that saw that body. Now listen to that. So I got in the yard and I was about to lose my cool because I was thinking if I could take some molecules out there and make me some guns and kill me some white folks. And one man said, now be cool. You're doing the same thing you promised me you'd never do. And I started crying. And then I heard Jesse Jackson say, he told me, Jesse, take our people on to the mountaintop. And that didn't bother me, even though I know Jesse got nowhere near him. And then Jesse said, I held his head in my hand while he died. And that didn't get to me. And then Jesse said, look at my shirt.
Now, this video is what a lot of people used to say that Jesse Jackson set Dr. King up.
And I looked around, sure enough, and Jesse Jackson's shirt was drenched in blood. And I realized the only way Jesse could have gotten that blood was stoop down on that floor at the Lorraine Motel and rake that blood off that floor and put that blood on him. And I went crazy. I really tried to kill Jesse. They grabbed us and all that, but that hurt me so bad. The other thing was, when ABMedia83 came back, says no need of prayer, no need of cry, no need of nothing. He's gone. It's over. He's going to glory. And we call.
Now, take what he's saying with a grain of salt and listen to Judge Joe Brown's response.
The meeting, the staff meeting, and Jesse claimed to have been ill.
By the way, like, share, subscribe, hit the Cash App, support the show, hit the Super Chat, support the show.
And ABMedia83 told him, Jesse, go ahead to the room and relax. Jesse had to have run like hell that room into that airport because he got out of Memphis to Chicago. All us feeling, everybody was still in the motel, cut the televisions on the next morning. That was Jesse Jackson in Chicago with that same bloody shirt on, telling that same lie. I've never respected Jesse since that moment. When they shot Dr. King, a black guy come running around that corner saying, he went that way, he went that way. James Earl Ray no more killed Dr. King and I killed him. And everybody knew it. He was a patsy set up. And the guy said, went that way, went that way. And said, who went that way? He said, that man ran out that building and dropped the rifle on the sidewalk and jumped in a white Mustang, had a red Alabama tag and took off. Well, hell, I wasn't worried. That's no car to America look like a Mustang, but a Mustang, a white with red Alabama tag. Where's he going? The police have him like that. And I asked that rifle was left on that sidewalk. That was the rifle that James Earl Ray had.
Basically said that was the rifle James L. Ray purchased but did not shoot. That because the bullet from that rifle was not.
Yeah, I know. It was an
Anyway,
one.
yeah.
And I've listened to that before. And I interviewed Dr. Abernathy. I interviewed Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jackson. I got a sworn statement from Reverend Billy Kyles' wife at the time. And I also at one time used to represent the chauffeur who was there waiting. And I'm very familiar with the person he's describing that supposedly went on to work with the FBI. I studied his history intensely. Now, what he's saying isn't, well, I'll chalk it down. Let's just say in the lapse of time, his recollection does not match that of certain other people. And you get somebody in the carotid artery complex, they're pretty doggone bloody. Even though a lot of the blood did not get on the ground because a lot of it was trapped inside. He had a tear on his side of his face. They shot him right here. They were trying to take a headshot. I don't care what he says about what he did in World War II. It's an easy shot. It's about 45 yards away, which is point blank for shooting deer. So anybody that's been out in deer season and brought back some venison could have made that shot. Elementary, wasn't hard. Could make it standing up offhand, down on a bench with sandbags. It's a piece of cake. Don't have to make any compensations. It's a straight on shot. I agree with him. It wasn't Ray's rifle because I know what it was. It was an XM21 that the FBI got 5 of in late December on an invoice, a copy of which I
Context matters.
possess several copies. And in late April 1968, when the Justice Department ordered those 5 XM-21s returned to the Defense Department, the FBI claimed they lost one, and that is the apparent murder weapon. There's 5,000 rounds of the particularized ammunition that was used to kill King. And I presented this in great detail on one of the flights. I sat next to Jesse Jackson, and he was saying, you know what? Anything I can do, I'll do. Let's get to the bottom of this. I also presented this in a more detailed form to Reverend Abernathy. He said the same thing. Whatever I can do, we need to get to the bottom of this.
By the way, Dr. King's family went after the federal government in the 1990s, and Jesse Jackson's name was not mentioned. So, yeah.
When I briefed Reverend Kyles and when I briefed Reverend Benjamin Hooks, they said, let sleeping dogs lie. They both used the exact same language.
And by the way, they won that case against the government, too.
And the interview that Dick Gregory did of Dr. Billy Kyles, or Reverend Billy Kyles, is very informative.
What you're fixing to witness now is the man who came by to get King to take him to dinner. And 30 years later at a press conference, he slipped because God do baffle your mind sometimes.
Bring the family and march with us. And when I finish sharing with them the last hour of Dr. King's life, don't hurry. But that gave me the wonderful privilege of spending the last hour on earth. 3 preachers in a room, Abernathy, King, and Kyle. And we spent that last hour together in room 306 at the Lorraine Motel. The press is always curious, and writers, what went on? What did you talk about? I say, we just talk preacher talk. What preachers talk about when they get together.
Y'all pay real attention to what you're fixing to hear now.
About 5:45, we walked on the balcony, and he was talking to people in the courtyard. He stood here and I stood there. Only as I moved away, so we could have a clear shot, the shot rang out. Thank you. Turned around and then knocked him back on the balcony.
30 years later, his brother never realized he would slip and stay there.
Now, some of what is claimed here is directly contradicted by some of the witnesses that I talked to or had an investigator talk to. What his storyline is does not match. This whole thing about him smearing himself with blood, that is accounted for by several witnesses who gave statements about Jesse Jackson attempting to offer some comfort to King while he's laying there fatally wounded and quickly expiring. And the fact that you got your carotid artery, it ain't exactly being still. There's a lot of blood going on. And what
pay attention,
they indicated was with total disregard for the fact that he was getting blood all over him, he was trying to do something to comfort King. So I wouldn't buy into that story.
So Trump released a statement and he says, Reverend Jesse Jackson is dead at 84. I knew him well long before becoming president. He was a good man with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. He was very gregarious, someone who truly loved people. Despite the fact that I am falsely and consistently called a racist by the scoundrels and lunatics on the radical left, Democrats all, it was always my pleasure to help Jesse along the way. I provided office space for him and his Rainbow Coalition for years.
Well,
in the Trump building, at 40 Wall Street responded to his request for help in getting criminal justice reform passed and signed when no other president would even try. single-handedly pushed and passed long-term funding for historical Black colleges and universities, HBCUs, which Jesse loved, but also which other presidents would not do.
Yes.
Responded to Jesse's support for opportunity zones, the single most successful economic development package yet approved for Black businesses, for Black businessmen and women, and much more. Jesse was a force of nature like few others before him. He had much to do with the election without acknowledgement or credit of Barack Hussein Obama, a man who Jesse could not stand. He loved his family greatly, and to them, I send my deepest sympathies and condolences. Jesse will be missed. President Donald J. Trump.
I'd have no reason to disagree with the president. That's consistent with what Jesse Jackson conveyed to me.
Yes.
That Donald Trump had provided his office space when he ran for president twice and showed that there was a viable opportunity.
You hear that, Butthurt Blue?
For a Black man to get the nomination. Were he given a fair chance? Also, the whole thing about the assistance and all of the rest of it and the opinion about Barack Obama is true. I mean, what you just heard from the president is exactly what Jesse Jackson said to me personally. Now, he knew who I was, and we had been on a podium a time or two speaking at various places, particularly as a commendation or commemoration of the assassination of Dr. King over the years. So we have had spoken at great length about events, but culmination is the concerted hours spent there next to him talking about this, and also as we go.
Presidential nominee Barack Obama. On Sunday, Jackson had just completed an interview with the Fox News channel and made the following comment, he says, in reaction to a recent Obama speech on the morals and responsibilities of African-American men.
Shout out to Afro Technics for the Cash App. You get a
cha-ching, 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 cha-ching.
He said he
You
needed
better
his balls
thank
cut
you,
off.
donors.
And you know what that was about? It was a lie Barack Obama told with a straight face. Jesse Jackson and I discussed at some length the fact that for the last 50 years, all of the statistics kept by the court show that out of all of the demographics in America, guess which demographic paid its child support most regularly on time? That was Black men who were ordered to pay child support following a divorce. Better than everybody in the country. And Obama, on this speech for Father's Day, had gotten up in this assembly in Chicago and said, my brothers, Black brothers, you know we need to do better because my African-American brothers, we need to do better because we know we pay child support worse than anybody else in the country. And he had an open mic, and he said basically he needs his balls cut off because that's a lie. And what's going on is it was a lie, because the truth of the matter is it was the exact opposite, and Obama ought to have known it. He was pandering to his audience rather than stating the truth, which is, I congratulate my Black brothers for being best in this country, in the United States of America, for taking care of their children following child support orders from a divorce. And people don't believe that because of the negative propaganda, and that fool pandered into it. And Jackson was outraged by it. We talked about that.
So I want to read you this here because it's another pandering person, Kamala Harris. So on the 17th, yesterday, on the 17th, when, Jesse Jackson passed away, people, tweet out their condolences. And here she go with her elaborate story. Reverend Jesse Jackson was one of America's greatest patriots. He spent his life summoning all of us who fulfill the promise of America and building coalitions to make the promise real. And then she goes into his bio, a son of Greenville, South Carolina, rose to the civil rights days, blah, 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 blah. Here she goes about herself. As a young law student, I would drive back and forth from Oakland, where I live, to San Francisco, where I went to school. I had a bumper sticker in the back window of my car that read, Jesse Jackson for president. As I would drive across the Bay Bridge, you would not believe how many people from every walk of life would give me a thumbs up or honk of support. There were small interactions, but they exemplified Reverend Jackson's life work, lifting up the dignity of working people, building community and coalitions, and strengthening our democracy and nation. I was proud to partner with and learn from him on this work throughout my career, and I am so grateful for the time we spent together this January. Reverend Jackson was a selfless leader, mentor, and friend to me and so many others. So I think she's lying, saying that when she drove her car across the Bay Bridge, people will honk their horn because of the sticker. No, I don't believe that. And she also
let's take that. Let's take that. When Jesse Jackson ran for president the first time, how old was she?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we should do a fact.
She was born in 1964 at the same hospital where my late mother-in-law worked as a pediatric nurse in the delivery room. Same hospital, same delivery room where my last wife was born a few months after that.
This is who the Democrats put up for their nominee to be president.
So let's fast forward and find out when he ran for president and how
he ran
old she
twice,
was.
in 1984 and 1988.
Okay, 1984. She was how old?
I don't know. What year was she born?
1964. She was 20.
Okay, yeah, 64. She was 20, and she's saying she was a law student.
She wasn't a law student, and
so, but he ran again in 88. So maybe she's talking about 88.
maybe 88. But, you know, I suspect it's another one of those. I was listening to Tupac in the dorms when Tupac would have been 13 years old. I was listening to Tupac in my dorm room, smoking a joint. You know, that's what she said. But Tupac would have been, he said, I pay my workers enough so they can afford the product that they build. And that was Trump's thing, and that was Jesse's thing, Jesse Jackson's thing. The people that are around that we deal with ought to be put in a position so they can participate in and enjoy what we, or what I, meaning themselves, were working to bring about. And that was a simpatico type thing. I admired it. So, yeah, that happened.
Okay, so let's fast forward, though, because this is another clip.
Meanwhile, one other thing, too. See, juxtapose this with what you just saw Trump say at the time. Juxtapose it with what Reverend Jackson said about Donald Trump at the time, and what the press says about him now and the woke people say about him now. And they love Hillary, but I just mentioned that in 1966, Hillary was there with her parents trying to keep Negroes at the time out of this Chicago suburb.
Yeah, she was a Goldwater girl.
Right. So,
but this is who the Democrats ran for president.
So here's the question. I want to play this clip here. And this is the question is, why is Jesse Jackson in the recent years talking another tune when it comes to Donald Trump? So let me just play this real quick.
Well, I want to see us in this year use our collective vote to defeat Donald Trump. Trump represents something dangerous to America. Using the presidency for personal gain, without enforcing the migrants laws and our Constitution, playing on racial fears. In Africa and the Caribbean are S.O.s, the S stands for. It's a Mexican judge is incapable of being judicious. The Charlottesville situation where you had the white supremacists march with tiki lamps challenging Jews. banning Muslims. He's done some awful stuff to America, and we cannot afford that. We're more isolated in the world. We are isolated from the G7 countries. We're isolated from our neighbors in Canada and Mexico. We deserve better leadership in this. I want to see Trump defeated. Well, I want to.
So he was.
I don't know.
Yeah. So is that just politics? You know, listen, you on that side.
I think this goes to Art Newstall when he was trying too hard to fit in.
I'm on this side, so I got a rep for my side, which means, you know, I'm going to think of something or say something negative about you to push for my side, the Democrats, to win.
Okay, there's an old saying. It says, all's fair in love and war. And as General Clausewitz said in his treatise on war, in German, it's Vom Krieg, he says, war is but the ultimate extension of the political process, and every rule that applies to politics applies to war, and so do the rules of war apply to politics. So one should not be surprised at the methodologies, the statements, and the ins and outs are quite similar. So all's fair in love and war. And I don't know what Reverend Jackson's motivation was at the time, but that's not what he told me about Donald Trump when I sat next to him. And it's not what he apparently said before. Now, in each instance, he could have been puffing, telling a tale, telling the truth for political purposes. So I don't know.
Okay.
I've never had a conversation with him post his having made those remarks. If they're his remarks and not generated by AI.
Oh.
Oh, well, I'm not going to dispute that because anything's possible now with AI. But yeah, so let me just, you know, in closing here, let me just highlight some of his achievements, you know, public policies and legislative shift.
Y'all get the idea, and I've gone over his policies. But this was my take on the late, great Jesse Jackson. Yes, I will be on later for Coliseum night. And we're going to be talking about the fight for black boys. And the thumbnail says it all. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank everybody that came through. This is ABMedia83, and I'm out. Peace. Yo, this is ABMedia83. To support the channel, hit the Cash App. Also, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the video. Also, be sure to hit that bell notification so you can be notified the next time I upload a live stream, video, or short. And always, always remember, guard your image, guard your peace. Keep it moving. This is ABMedia83, and I'm out. Peace.